Okie dokie. Sorry. I really, at some point, probably need to buy a phone stand. I probably keep saying that. Hopefully the sound is okay. On top of my mantle, I thought maybe the sound would be better if it was out in the open rather than on my enclosed bookshelf. Not sure. We'll see how it goes. But I did forget my coffee, so hold on. So it is going to be like 79 degrees here in South Carolina today, record-breaking temperatures. So I'm wearing shorts and a t-shirt, and I think I'm going to go to the beach this afternoon because it's 80 degrees in February. I feel like you have to go to the beach. So anyway, don't think anybody is in the chat yet. I don't think I gave any notice whatsoever because I'm rude. My apologies. I hope everybody's first day number 2 of Lent is going well. I hope you're not suffering too much. My son was already melting down last night, so he's giving up sweets, trying to give up sweets, and he's totally addicted to sugar. So I'm happy about the sacrifice because it's like a war with him to try to even get him to stop. So I'm hoping he makes it. We'll see. Anyway, today I wanted to do a continuation of yesterday in regards to this book. Good morning, Anna. I hope you have an awesome day at work. Fatima and Lucia's Own Words. This is the one I read a little bit from yesterday. And my point yesterday was the message of Fatima. I feel like it gets sometimes clouded by the different arguments about, did Russia get consecrated? Is the Pope a communist? The normal arguments are, did they hide the third secret from us? And I'll just be quite honest with you, all of that pales in comparison in the importance department compared to what we can learn from the spirituality of the seers. And that's really, I think, the message of Fatima. Like I said yesterday, the whole message of Fatima is really the conversion of sinners, the triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary in men. It is a battle between the Blessed Virgin in the Marxist world for the hearts of men. And really, it's a battle between the Blessed Virgin and the serpent, which is behind Marxism, for the hearts of men. And it's a hard battle, right? It's I was saying the other day how I used to lead these little escapades when I was a kid, and it was so much easier to convince my friends to do bad things than it is for me now as an adult to convince people to do good things. It's so much harder because Satan, lures people in with pleasure and false freedom and all this stuff. And then the Blessed Virgin, she has eternal happiness on her side, but for a lot of people that's hard to see. It's hard to see the benefits, I guess. So anyway, she gives us a solution to that in Fatima, and she gives us 3 very good examples of the solution to that. And the solution is obviously prayer, especially the rosary, and sacrifice for sinners. And I want to talk a little bit about that today. So yesterday I talked a little bit about Jacinta. Today I want to talk about Lucia. So I'm probably not going to read, I would love to read the whole second memoir, which describes her life. But I probably can't for time's sake. I'll bore everyone to death. So I guess I'll just go through each section and give a synopsis. So for her childhood, her early childhood, she was the youngest, and she was very much loved. There was very much pre-apparitions. Lucia had a very, very happy childhood. She was always dressed nicely because her sisters were dressmakers. There was always dances in the town that she would attend. She would go everywhere with her older sisters. Just a good family life. Mother, father, children all came together at the end of the day to pray. And the funny thing about the dances, though, is eventually they got a new parish priest in the town who shut down the dances. He said, no more dances, it's pagan. He called them pagan dances. And so he told people to stop going. I don't think he actually shut them down, but Lucia's mom made her girls stop going, and then everybody in the town kind of followed suit. So they looked at Lucia's mom as a role model. The other moms did. she was very well respected. The family was well respected. So this I thought was interesting from her first communion. So let me see. I guess I'll read the whole thing because it's pretty interesting. So the day which the parish priest had appointed for the solemn first communion of the children of the parish was drawing near. In view of the fact that I knew my catechism and was already 6 years old, my mother thought perhaps I could now make my first communion. To this end, she sent me with my sister Carolina to the catechism instructions which the parish priest was giving to the children in preparation for this great day. I went, therefore, radiant with joy, hoping soon to be able to receive my God for the first time. The priest gave his instructions. Seated in a chair on a platform, he called me to his side, and when one or other of the children was unable to answer his questions, he told me to give the answer instead, just to shame them. The eve of the great day arrived, and the priest sent word that all the children were going to go to the church in the forenoon so that he could make the final decision as to which ones were to receive their first communion. What was not my disappointment when he called me up beside him, caressed me, and then said I was to wait till I was 7 years old. I began to cry at once, and just as I would have done with my own mother, I laid my head on his knees and sobbed. It happened that another priest who had been called in to help at the confessions entered the church just at that moment. Seeing me in this position, he asked the reason for my tears. On being informed, he took me along to the sacristy and examined me on the catechism and the mystery of the Eucharist. After this, he took me by the hand and brought me to the parish priest, saying, Father Penna, you can let this child go to communion. She understands what she's doing better than many of the others. But she's only 6 years old, objected the good priest. Never mind, I'll take the responsibility for that. All right, then, the good priest said to me, go and tell your mother that you are making your first communion tomorrow. And she goes on to say, I could never express the joy I felt. And then fast forward, the thing that she remembered right before she left for her first communion, her mother tells her, pray that you'll be a great saint. That's what her prayer was on her first communion. And the other thing I found interesting was this. Let me see. The confessor, felt myself feel respect. Okay, so her confessor, she made her first confession. The confessor says, kneel down then there before Our Lady and ask her with great confidence to take care of your heart, to prepare it to receive her beloved Son worthily tomorrow, and to keep it for him alone. And now I found this very fascinating. She says, in the church, there was more than one statue of Our Lady. But as my sisters took care of the altar of Our Lady of the Rosary, I usually went there to pray. That is why I went there on this occasion also, to ask her with all the ardor of my soul to keep my poor heart for God alone. As I repeated this humble prayer over and over again, with my eyes fixed on the statue, it seemed to me that she smiled, and with a loving look and kindly gesture, assured me that she would. My heart was overflowing with joy, and I could scarcely utter a single word. So it seems almost that prior to the apparitions, Lucia was receiving grace through Our Lady of the Rosary. I find that fascinating because of the message of Fatima. Out of all the statues, that was the one she chose to pray in front of because that's the one her sisters had cleaned, had taken care of. So that's some divine providence. And again, it's drawing more attention to the message of Fatima, which is the conversion of sinners, the triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary in the hearts of men, the Rosary, by means of the Rosary. Okay, then it talks about, all right, her first communion. 1915, I found this interesting. This was how things, so a mysterious presage in 1915. So this was how things stayed until I was 7 years old. My mother then decided I should take over care of the sheep. My father did not agree, nor did my sisters. They were so fond of me that they wanted an exception made in my case. My mother would not give in. She's just like the rest, she said. Carolina is already 12 years old. That means she can now begin to work in the fields or else learn to be a weaver or a seamstress, whichever she prefers. So that's when she goes to do the sheep, to tend to the sheep. And I didn't realize she actually had an apparition of an angel without Jacinta and Francisco. So on that first day, let's see, beginning my life as a shepherdess, news that I was beginning my life as a shepherdess spread rapidly among the other shepherds. Almost all of them came and offered to be my companions. I said yes to everybody and arranged with each one to meet on the slopes of the Serra. Next day, the Serra was a solid mass of sheep with their shepherds, as though a cloud had descended upon it. But I felt ill at ease in the midst of such a hubbub. I therefore chose 3 companions from among the shepherds, and without saying a word to anyone, we arranged to pasture our sheep on the opposite slopes. These were the 3 I chose: Teresa, Mateus, her sister Maria Rosa, and Maria Justino. On the following day, we set out in the direction of a hill known as the Cabeco. We went up to the northern slope. A place that Your Excellency already knows by name is on the southern side of the same hill. Okay, she's just giving details. Together with our flocks, we climbed almost to the top of the hill. At our feet lay a wide expanse of trees. Around midday, we ate our lunch. After this, I invited my companions to pray the rosary with me, to which they eagerly agreed. We had hardly begun when there before our eyes we saw a figure poised in the air above the trees. It looked like a statue made of snow, rendered almost transparent by the rays of the sun. "What is that?" asked my companions, quite frightened. "I don't know." We went on praying with our eyes fixed on the figure before us, and as we finished our prayer, the figure disappeared. As was usual with me, I resolved to say nothing, but my companions told their families what had happened the very moment they reached home. The news soon spread, and one day when I arrived home, my mother questioned me. "Look here, they say you've seen I don't know what up there. What is it that you saw?" "I don't know," and as I could not explain it myself, I went on. "It looked like a person wrapped up in a sheet." As I meant to say that I couldn't discern its features, I added, "You couldn't make out any eyes or hands on it." My mother put an end to the whole matter with a gesture of disgust. Childish nonsense. So that was in 1915. So then in 1916, apparitions of the angel start, the angel of peace. After some time, we returned with our flocks to the same place, and the very same thing happened again. My companions once more told the whole story. After a brief interval, the same thing was repeated. It was the 3rd time that my mother had heard all these things, and so she starts questioning her. Okay, so around this time, Francisco and Jacinta sought and obtained permission from their parents to start taking care of their own flock. So she left her previous companions and joined her cousins, and there was more apparitions in the same way of the angel. So, and just a reminder of what the first audible apparition where they could make, there was a message. This is how that went down. We had enjoyed, they were playing a game. We had enjoyed the game for a few moments only when a strong wind began to shake the trees. We looked up, startled to see what was happening, for the day was unusually calm. Then we saw coming towards us above the olive trees the figure I have already spoken about. Jacinta and Francisco had never seen it before, nor had I ever mentioned it to them. As it drew closer, we were able to distinguish its features. It was a young man, about 14 or 15 years old, whiter than snow, transparent as crystal when the sun shines through it, and of great beauty. On reaching us, he said, "Do not be afraid. I am the angel of peace. Pray with me." Kneeling on the ground, he bowed until his forehead touched the ground and made us repeat these words 3 times. "My God, I believe, I adore, I hope, and I love you. I ask pardon of you for those who do not believe, do not adore, do not hope, and do not love you." Then rising, he said, "Pray thus, the hearts of Jesus and Mary are attentive to the voice of your supplications." His words engraved themselves so deeply on our minds that we could never forget them. From then on, we used to spend long periods of time prostrate like the angel, repeating his words until sometimes we fell exhausted. I warned my companions right away that this must be kept secret, and thank God they did what I wanted. Some time passed and summer came. Then we had to go home for siesta. One day we were playing on the stone slabs of the well at the bottom of the garden belonging to my parents. And suddenly we saw again the same figure, or rather angel as it seemed to me. And he kind of rebukes them, right? He asks them, he says, "What are you doing?" He asked as they were playing. He rebukes them. He says, "What are you doing?" He asked. Pray very much. The most holy hearts of Jesus and Mary have designs of mercy on you. Offer prayers and sacrifices constantly to the Most High." "How are we to make sacrifices?" I asked. "Make of everything you can a sacrifice and offer it to God as an act of reparation for the sins by which he is offended and in supplication for the conversion of sinners. You will thus draw down peace upon your country. I am its angel guardian, the angel of Portugal. Above all, accept and bear with submission the suffering which the Lord will send you." Considerable time had elapsed when one day we went to pasture our sheep on a property belonging to my parents. After lunch, they decided to go pray. As soon as we arrived, we knelt down with our foreheads touching the ground and began the prayer that the angel taught them. And he returns and he says, the angel returns and he was holding a chalice in his left hand with the host suspended above it, from which some drops of blood fell into the chalice. Leaving the chalice suspended in the air, the angel knelt down beside us and made us repeat 3 times, "Most Holy Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, I adore you profoundly, and I offer you the most precious body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ, present in all the tabernacles of the world, in reparation for the outrages, sacrileges, and indifferences with which he himself is offended, and through the infinite merits of his most sacred heart and the Immaculate Heart of Mary, I beg of you the conversion of poor sinners." Then rising, he took the chalice and the host in his hands. He gave the sacred host to me and shared the blood from the chalice between Jacinta and Francisco, saying as he did so, "Take and drink the body and blood of Jesus Christ, horribly outraged by ungrateful men. Make reparation for their crimes and console your God." Those are some powerful words. Remember, these are kids under the age of 10. And this is what the heavenly visitors are telling them. That's serious stuff. I mean, when you put it in perspective, I mean, if you have children, right? So my kids are a little older. My daughter's 11 and my son's 9 now, but I can't imagine them getting some sort of message like that when they're, 6, 7, 8 years old. That had to be absolutely terrifying for them in a lot of ways. Once again, he prostrated on the ground and repeated with us 3 more times the same prayer, "Most Holy Trinity," and then disappeared. They stayed in the position for a long time. When they got up, they noticed it was dark and went to return home. So going back to the message, the angel warns Lucia, he says, "Bear whatever sufferings," I'm paraphrasing, but he says, "Bear whatever sufferings come your way," with serenity, basically. So then the sufferings for her starts. The dances stop. So that was one of her greatest pleasures, going to the dances with her sisters. She was all dressed up. It was a big deal. They were very popular. The family was very popular. So, so I forget, let's see. Yeah, this is about the dances stopping from the parish priest. And this is what the mom says. So somebody remarked one day to my mother, "Up to now, it was no sin to go to dances, but just because we have a new parish priest, it is a sin. How can that be?" "I don't know," replied my mother. "All I know is that the priest does not want dancing, so my daughters are not going to such gatherings anymore. At most, I would let them dance a bit within the family because the priest says there is no harm in that." During this period, my 2 eldest sisters left home and got married. And she says, this is really the beginnings of the suffering. She says, "My father had fallen into bad company and let his weakness get the better of him. This meant the loss of some of our property. When my mother realized that our means of livelihood were diminishing, she resolved to send my 2 sisters, Gloria and Carolina, out to work as servants. At home, there remained only my brother to look after our few remaining fields. Me and my brother to look after our few remaining fields. My mother to take care of the house, and myself to take our sheep out to pasture. My poor mother seemed just drowned in the depths of distress. When we gathered round the fire at night time, waiting for my father to come in to supper, my mother would look at her daughter's empty places and exclaim with profound sadness, "My God, where has all the joy of our home gone?" Then, resting her head on a little table beside her, she would burst into bitter tears. My brother and I wept with her. It was one of the saddest scenes I have ever witnessed. What with longing for my sisters and seeing my mother so miserable, I felt my heart was just breaking. Although I was only a child, I understood perfectly the situation we were in. Then I remembered the angel's words, "Above all, accept submissively the sacrifices that the Lord will send you." At such times I would withdraw to a solitary place so as not to add to my mother's suffering, but by letting her see my own. So much suffering began to undermine my mother's health. She was no longer able to work, so she sent for my sister Gloria to come and take care of her and look after the house. All surgeons and doctors around were consulted. There was no improvements. This is how things were with us when the 13th of May, 1917 arrived. It was at this time my brother reached the age for enlistment in the army, but he didn't go to war. He was able to get out of it. And so the apparitions of Our Lady, she says, I will not delay now describing the apparition of May 13th. And the first words that Our Lady spoke to us that day, after having promised to take us to heaven, she asked, "Are you willing to offer yourselves to God to bear all the sufferings he wills to send you as an act of reparation for the sins by which he is offended and of supplication for the conversion of sinners?" "Yes, we are willing," was our reply. "Then you are going to have much to suffer, but the grace of God will be your comfort." So that was the opening of the apparitions. And you all know the apparition, so I don't have to go into that. But she suffered a lot. So her family situation continued to deteriorate with her mom's sickness. And then the other problem was, so her mom didn't believe her at all, or her sisters. So everybody in the house basically turned against her. They said she was lying about the apparitions. They sold off a lot of their property except really for where the apparition took place. I think it's called the Cova da Iria. But because of all the crowds that came because of the apparition, it ruined the land. So they couldn't grow anything there. They couldn't have their sheep there, all this stuff. So she was blamed for that. They blamed her for that. They blamed... the parish priest eventually left, and he was well liked by the devout people of the town, so they blamed her for the parish priest leaving because he couldn't handle the apparitions, things like that. So in the midst of this, she says this, "My sister sided with my mother, and all around me the atmosphere was one of utter scorn and contempt. Then I would remember the old days and ask myself, where is all that affection now that my family had for me such a short while ago? My one relief was to weep before the Lord as I offered him my sacrifice. It was on this very day that, in addition to what I have already narrated, Our Lady, as though guessing what was going on, said to me, 'Are you suffering a great deal? Don't lose heart. I will never forsake you. My immaculate heart will be your refuge in the way that will lead you to God.'" She then gets diabolical attacks, and she's plagued with doubts. She's plagued with temptation. She's plagued with temptations not to go on the 13th of every month. Horrible dreams, stuff like that. The trouble in her family continues. At some point, her father dies completely, and she said he was really the only one who would settle the arguments and kind of stick up for her, although he didn't really believe her all that much either. They were imprisoned on the 13th day of August. We all know that story, by the Freemasonic government. And her family really handed her over. So there was a line of questioning that happened before the imprisonment. And Jacinta and Francisco's parents shielded them from it. They wouldn't send them, but they sent Lucia to get basically interrogated by this Masonic government. The administrator, they call it. And there was death threats. So on a certain day, 3 gentlemen came to speak to us. After their questioning, which was anything but pleasant, they took their leave with this remark: "See that you decide to tell that secret of yours. If you don't, the administrator has every intention of taking your lives." Jacinta, her face lighting up with joy that she made no effort to hide, said, "How wonderful! I so love our Lord and Our Lady. In this way, I'll be seeing them soon." The rumor got round that the administrator did really intend to kill us. This led my aunt, who was married and lived elsewhere, to come to our house with the express purpose of taking us home with her. For as she explained, I live in another district, they wouldn't be able to get to you. But her plan was never carried out because we were unwilling to go, and replied, "If they kill us, it's all the same, we'll go to heaven." On the 13th of September, Our Lady says to them, "God is pleased with your sacrifices, but he does not want you to sleep with the rope on, only wear it during the day." They had a tight rope as an act of penance tied around them, and Our Lady is saying, don't sleep with that. She gets interrogated by priests. The parish priest questioned her over and over and over again, and he didn't particularly like her. There was a few that were kind to her that had come in, but the parish priest really was not interested in this whole scene. And then of course she has to suffer through her cousins dying, and on top of it, the people that did believe her weren't really a source of consolation for her because she was constantly harassed. They would hide from people because they couldn't go anywhere without somebody wanting them to pray or ask for a healing or, ask for things. So that was the other thing. The mother falls seriously ill, is on the verge of death, and Lucia goes out and asks with her sisters and asks the Blessed Mother to cure her, and she is cured. And she even says, she says, "How strange," she said, "Our Lady cured me, and somehow I still don't believe. I don't know how this can be." And Lucia never gets bitter or anything. She really says at the end of it, it was God's way of keeping her humble. And then she falls into poor health as well. And then the rest is as her, she talks about her adult life a little, but the amounts of suffering they went through is just astonishing to me. Both physical suffering, emotional, there's definitely a lot of emotional and social suffering, things like that. And then they had the grace to bear it. And that's the message too. Our Lady doesn't leave. Our Lady is always with us. When you work for Mary, that's probably the only consolation you will ever have, because nothing is easy, nothing is pleasant. But she's with you. Ultimately, if you help her, she helps you for sure. Anyway, I guess I'll go to the chat. Nobody, just Anna. All right. I probably lost people. I bored everybody with my reading. Hi, Elizabeth. Good morning. Actually, you're in Holland or Finland? I forget. It's probably afternoon over there, I think, or is it night? I don't know. Are you 7 or 8 hours ahead, right? Anyway, current events. I don't know. I don't think I got anything. I've been avoiding the news. So, weird things happening with Bishop O'Connell. That death. If you haven't checked out Timothy Gordon interviewed Jesse Romero, who was a Los Angeles Sheriff's Department deputy, I think. I think he was in some specialized gang units and things like that as well. Interviewed him. It's on Timothy Gordon's channel. Go check that out. That's interesting. So basically it came out that Bishop O'Connell was murdered. I'm sure everybody knows that. Originally they had said it was a gunshot wound to the chest, maybe a burglary gone wrong is what they were kind of saying. But Jesse, who has inside information, is saying that's not it at all. He was actually shot in the back of the head several times, execution style, basically. And then his body was put into a Masonic ritual position. So go watch that video. It's very interesting. And the only thing I have to say about it is all of this Freemasonic satanic stuff is all coming out. It all has to come to the surface. My dad has many sayings, one of them being the scum always rises to the top. Now, I'm not saying Bishop O'Connell is scum. Please don't get me wrong. I don't know. I think he was a holy bishop. He did have some weird modernist tendencies. I don't know. I'm not judging the man. I'm just saying all the Freemasonic ideology, that sort of scum, is all going to have to rise to the top and then be scooped off by God or whatever, God, the people of God. So it's so interesting to me. It's like every time there's like a cover up or something weird going on, it's God is immediately shedding light on it. He's raising up Catholics to shed light on it. It's very interesting. But all of this Freemasonic stuff is all going to come out in the open. All of it. And everybody who's been called a conspiracy theorist for years and years and years is being vindicated right now and will continue to be vindicated. And the only way that this is going to be dealt with in that Freemasonry, and that is the promise of this age, okay? That is the promise of this age. If you go back and look at the apparitions of Bueno Suceso, right? That is the promise. The Freemasons are going to be wiped off the face of the earth and all of their ideology with them. That is the triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary. The Freemasons their tentacles that are in the church are going to be ripped out. That's the church is going to be freed and purified from Freemasons and their horrible satanic ideology. And that's really the promise of this age. Do I think it's the end of the world? Not for the church. For the Freemasons, yes, it's the end of the world. For them, it absolutely is. So it depends on what side you're on. For us, for the people of God, they'll kill a bunch of us, no doubt about it. We'll die in natural disasters and whatever else. We'll die. A bunch of us are going to die during the purification. We're going to suffer. But at the end of the day, at the end of it all, there will be a remnant that rebuilds the church. That you can take to the bank in cash, as far as I'm concerned. So anyway, I don't know if anybody else, let's see. Elizabeth, Netherlands, that's right. As soon as I said Mason, my internet started going out. Yeah, welcome to my life. Oh, hold on. Live chat. There's two Elizabeth. That's right. One of them is from Vermont. Sorry. Oh, you're in Vermont. I'm sorry. I forget. There's another viewer, I think, that's from the Netherlands or Holland or something that's also named Elizabeth. I'm sorry. I get people confused. Don't mind me. Vermont. Oh, so you're getting a blizzard while it's 80 degrees here, right? I think that's what's happening. Stay warm, my friends. Crazy weather. I think we are getting a cold front, though. And it's going to be like 50 tomorrow. Bika, that's right. Why did I think her name was Elizabeth? So weird. Sorry, I'm having a blonde moment. I knew that. I definitely knew that. Okay. Anyway, I hope y'all have a blessed day. And yeah, that's all I got. Joan of Arc Media out.